also documentation of the atrocities. We have civil society organizations, especially women civil society organizations. They have been huge because we have developed a culture of organizing among women. So women have huge organizations, looking after the documentation of atrocities that are committed gender against women or against children. And we have, this kind of resilience. So the resilience, for those people is the one or is the actually value and the principle and the practice that has been holding Sudanese together, whether within Sudan or outside Sudan. We become as a one community.
The world is not talking about Sudan enough. At St. Martin's Cloak, we are committed to changing that, while informing listeners of how you can help save lives in Sudan right now. In today's episode, we spoke with Dr. Suad Musa, an author, academic, and humanitarian from the Darfur region of Sudan, specifically the city of El-Fasher. She currently lives in the United Kingdom. We hear from Dr. Musa about how food is used as a weapon of war in Sudan, the impact of the rainy season on humanitarian aid, the impact of the war on Sudanese women and girls, the impact of the war in Sudan on global stability, how Sudanese artists practice resistance, the strength of Sudanese communities and culture, and much more. Check out the links in the description of this episode for ways that you can help. And if you don't mind, take a moment to leave a review for the show on your app and share the episode. It really helps. Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is Andrew Loftusness recording from Istanbul.
Hi, everyone. This is Milos Majore recording from London. So, Andrew, we're back after a small hiatus of a couple of weeks. We haven't really been here in the recording studio, our respective recording studios, that is, to set up an interview like this in a couple of weeks. Hopefully by now, our listeners know that we have been busy with, among other things, the creation of our first documentary, in which, Andrew, you brilliantly went back to Lebanon to talk to our friends at El-Fasher. So hopefully everyone has seen that by now. We encourage you to check it out on YouTube and on our Instagram page. But we are back with Sudan, interviewing Suad Musa.
Yeah, that's right. So our documentary is called Voices from Lebanon. It's on YouTube right now. We spent the last month putting it together. After coming back from Lebanon, it would mean a lot if anyone listening went and checked it out. Any interaction on the video helps tremendously. Likes, comments, shares with your friends. And as always, there is information in the description of the video of how you can help our friends, both from El-Fasher and the We Deserve Better Foundation, as they continue to assist displaced Lebanese people during a time of war. So check that out. It's also linked in our St. Martin's Cloak Instagram page. But as you said, Milos, we are back with our first interview in a little while. With Sudan. So before we get into that, I just want to say thank you so much to Suad. We truly appreciate you coming on. You have an absolute wealth of knowledge and expertise that we were very glad to draw from. So thank you again for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Suad. And you are always welcome back on the show. I thought this conversation was really meaningful, really insightful in many ways. Suad is herself from Sudan, from El-Fasher, and as such, listeners will probably be aware, but El-Fasher was the site of a horrendous, truly off-the-scale massacre last year, conducted by the rebel Rapid Support Forces. And she is based now in the United Kingdom. And she is involved in a lot of international advocacy efforts and, awareness raising campaigns. She is, as you said, an academic. And so we truly learned a lot. There were a lot of interesting angles that Suad brought to the conversation, including, and not limited to, the aspect of food security, or the aspect of how the rainy season in Sudan impacts not only, the food situation, but also the fighting, the infrastructure, the logistics of it all. So really, really interesting nuances that I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard from before.
Yeah, exactly. Because of the lack of attention that Sudan receives from international media, I always assume when we are interviewing someone that somebody listening to this is hearing about these facts for the first time, right? No matter how obvious those facts might seem to someone who is involved in the humanitarian aid or the foreign policy space, there's always someone hearing this for the first time. Now, that being said, I also learned a lot from this interview, right? In particular, when Suad was discussing in detail how food is used as a weapon of war in Sudan in a number of ways that the population is hurt and exploited by both warring parties in the conflict. Um, in particular, of course, by the RSF. So I learned a lot. I'm very grateful for that. Now, Suad, because of her background and her personal connections to her home in Sudan, and because of her professional experience as an academic, is able to bring a lot of passion and authority, I think is the right word, right, to this topic that I think someone who is only an academic or is only approaching these problems from that space would be able to bring to the table. So very, very grateful for that perspective. It's always a goal for us to talk to people who are actually from the places we are discussing, right? I think with Sudan, we have an increased responsibility to do that again because of that lack of coverage. We want to turn the mic over to honestly as many Sudanese guests as possible. So, I'll say this as many times as we have to. If you are listening and you are working or volunteering in that aid space or that advocacy space, or your friend is, share this episode with them, reach out to us on Instagram, link in the description. We want to hear from you.
Yes, please get in touch with us. And and it should be said that we will be covering Sudan a lot more. We've got a lot of exciting and interesting projects down the pipeline, and Sudan is going to continue to feature prominently. Trying to do our bit in addressing the lack of coverage elsewhere, and we're going to continue doing that for as long as we can. So please stay tuned for that. Now, on this interview with Suad, in terms of, or rather, in the interest of complete transparency with everyone, we were having basically every tech problem you could possibly have in this situation, from
And and then
bad
some new ones
internet.
that you couldn't even imagine.
Yeah, even the ones you couldn't even imagine. We were having bad connection issues. The audio was at sometimes dropping. In fact, what you're hearing is the second take of the interview that we tried to hold together. Luckily, the end result is, as you will hear, very, it's all there. So, nothing was cut. But what this means is that there were times where, I don't know about you, Andrew, but certainly I was not always able to necessarily hear and identify exactly what was being said by Suad. Enough to get the overall message, but there were some perhaps details that were lost. So if you notice a bit of a discrepancy between what Suad responds and the subsequent questioning, that there isn't necessarily a clean flow between the two, that is the reason why. Maybe now all I've done is draw more attention to this that would have otherwise gone unnoticed, but I felt the need to to bring this to the front. But regardless,
In that case, I'll draw a little bit more attention. You might hear some sounds in the background that may or may not be Milos and I frantically communicating offline, so to speak, trying to figure out how we can fix the tech problems. Now, I do think that we were able to overcome most of them on the back end. The important part, though, is that we were able to preserve the recording from Suad, and we interviewed her to hear from her, right? So you guys could hear from and learn from her experiences and her professional insights and not from our opinions. And as long as that comes across, it's a success in my book. And she has quite a lot to offer. So in that sense, I'm not worried about it.
yeah, and trust us when we say that we are going to learn from this and make sure it never happens again.
All right, so we want to get to the interview in just a second. A few notes, though. First off, I have to give a shout out to my friend KP, who put us in touch with Suad in the first place. KP is involved with a lot of the issues that we and the themes that we talk about on this show. I'll put a link in the description to her Instagram page so you can follow a lot of the work she does on a lot of issues of peace building and conflict mediation. Now, our guest, Suad, is also a published author. She has written the award-winning Hawks and Doves in Sudan's Armed Conflict. I will include a link in the description of this episode to the sales page. Go ahead and check that out. We love to support authors on the show. And then finally, at the very end of this interview, Suad lists a number of initiatives that you can support to enable grassroots aid and save lives inside Sudan. So we will put a timestamp in the description of this episode so you can check that out and make sure that you get that information. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we bring you Dr. Suad Musa. Dr. Suad Musa, good morning, and thank you so much for being here with us. Do you mind introducing yourself to our audience and just letting everyone know where you are from in Sudan and your professional background?
Thank you so much, Andrew, for hosting me to this show. And good morning to you and to Milos, and good morning to all our listeners. Suad, I come from Darfur in El-Fasher, and that is El-Fasher is my hometown where my family, live, my big and extended family. And so we have been through this war, which started on the 15th of April in Sudan, and it has been continuing until this very moment, atrociously and aggressively. My family really has been affected by all the atrocities committed, just like other people around us and in the whole of Sudan. And my professional background is that I am a community development worker and a practitioner, and I also specialize in humanitarian field, gender issues, peace studies, and that is where I had my PhD in peace studies from Bradford University. I also have established Gender Center for Peace Building and Sustainable Lively Development in El-Fasher. That was in 2019, just following the success of the revolution in Sudan in the toppling of the Islamist regime of Omar al-Bashir in 2019. So that is my professional background. I'm also a researcher and a scholar, and I write in Arabic and in English in electronic journals and also in specialized academic journals. Thank you.
Thank you, Suad. We wanted to dive into the Sudanese war itself that has now been going on for far too many years. And when we spoke last time, you spoke about the war having an effect not only obviously in terms of physical violence against the population, but also it has that psychological impact after so many years of continuous conflict. Can you unpack that a little bit and explain to us what the impact of this war is? So not just on the physical side, but also that psychological impact.
Okay, thank you. Yes, war has been going in Sudan since the 15th of April, and now 2023, and this has now entered the fourth year, and actually we are heading towards the fifth year, if it has not been really, ended. The conflict, Sudan is a very big country, and conflict has been everywhere. Actually, it started in Khartoum the first days, but the same day it expanded into Darfur, and which is my home region, and then it's expanded, all over Sudan. Um, there has been really, physical and violence and physical harm inflicted on people, and this physical harm and actually alongside, the trauma or psychological trauma affecting the whole population, especially those living inside, still living in Sudan. This physical violence and the direct harm inflicted on people is including direct targeting and casualties. So thousands of people really have been killed by indiscriminate artillery shelling and airstrikes and droning and in densely populated urban and rural areas. There are also have been massacres. There have been also and ethnically targeted violence, and also that all of these crimes have been documented by many international and as well as civil society organizations that have been still working in Sudan or even monitoring the situation from out of the country. They have been also sexualized, that is weaponized, actually sexual violence, and that is, women and girls have been actually the most or disproportionately affected by, trafficking and by sexual trafficking, by abduction and by forced labor and so on. There has been destruction of infrastructure, especially health system. So almost all health facilities have been destroyed by area bombardments, and there is also water treatment plants, schools, markets. They have been also targeted repeatedly by aerial bombardments. So we have now hundreds of health services have been out of order. Of services, and then leaving also the medical infrastructure nearly total in total collapse, and people injured have been unable really to receive any kind of life saving kind of treatment. There has also been a kind of mass displacement, and that has been really phenomenal because Sudan now has really experienced a kind of world's largest displacement crisis, and where tens of millions they displaced from their homes and from the country to regional borders and international borders, and this is practice now that has been now become a common place practice for both. Fighting factions, has caused all, this kind of food insecurity, localized famine, and, physical casualties and widespread starvation and so on. The psychological impact that really has been also affecting people is the erosion of mental health and mass trauma because of continuous bombardments and children hearing the noise of shelling and of aerial bombardments of shooting that have also generated a kind of a profound collective mass trauma across generations. And there have been also many assessments indicate that over half of households they report children showing acute signs of trauma, psychological distress, fear, and behavior. Actually, many people really died because of that of trauma alone. And young people and youth, they have been growing up, amidst this kind of vulnerability and atrocities, which has also its impact on their future build up and their future kind of mentality. There's have been also erosion of social fabric, and that is the social fabric of people. The Sudanese people, they have a very strong culture of society, and then and they depend actually on social safety nets in all problems that they may encounter. Now all these social safety nets have been destroyed by displacement or by fear, and by all these communities have really become dismantled or fractured, and they have been also trust on each other have also been affected, and that is also have also bear its high on the relationship between the community, which led to a kind of social disintegration and language of hatred language really um, uh, to dominate the social media as a result of this of this psychological trauma that people have been suffering. Thank you.
So I think not enough people are aware of how dire the food crisis is in Sudan right now. If they are aware, then they probably know the basic facts of conditions of famine and scarcity and access to food. But what we don't hear enough about either is how food is used as a weapon of war in Sudan. Can you explain to us what that looks like?
Yeah, and food crisis and food insecurity situation, and and lack of food and using food as a weapon of war. That is how food has been weaponized by both parties to the conflict, that is the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces, has been really huge and very destructive. And if we look at it, then we can see that there is kind of systematic destruction of agricultural infrastructure. Sudan is an agricultural country before actually the discovery of oil, but it's still the rural areas which constitutes the majority of the population in Sudan, and also the rural areas have been used. Have been actually has serving as the main pillar of food security situation through production. So that have been destruction of the agricultural infrastructure. So that is attacks on the on farming communities, and these farming communities, especially in Western Sudan, because Western Sudan, which is Darfur and Kordofan, they are recognized as farming communities. So we have farmers, we have pastoralists and agro-pastoralists who contributed to food security situation in Sudan. Now, this war has been targeting these communities, which make them very difficult for them really to go and to farm their lands. Even the lands have been subjected to a continuous and repeatedly kind of attacks and bombardment and burning. Destroying livestock enclosures and driving farmers actually off their fertile lands. There have been also a collapse of breadbasket because major agricultural hubs they turn into battlegrounds, and also the foodwares also have been destroyed, whether in all parts in Sudan, including in central Sudan. So so that have been were very devastating to communities who really depend on agricultural production, their own agricultural production, and then they have not for years, actually for decades or since independence of Sudan in 1956, they have not been considered in the plan on the development plan by the central states. Uh, there is also a kind of blocking and or blockading and restricting of humanitarian aid, and that means that the humanitarian aid, and thanks to the international community, they have also been really advocating, and they have been also mobilizing humanitarian aid yes, to reach the Sudanese, starting by the British, by French, and then by British for twice, because also 3 months ago, also Britain organized a kind of mobilization for the international community to contribute to the humanitarian aid. But when it come to how this humanitarian aid is delivered in Sudan, then it has become, it has become blocked by those forces. There is also a denial of cross-border and interline accesses. So both sides also they blocked the routine ways because yes, the infrastructure is very difficult in Sudan, especially having that people have become really largely dispersed in places where there is complete, lack of roads. So people navigate their way, through very difficult paths. All these, roads have been now also blocked, and also as well as the shipment of the humanitarian aid also have been restricted. So food comes through both Sudan or come maybe from Chad or from other neighboring countries, but it is very difficult or has been really obstructed to reach the people, whether in quantity and that is supposed to reach them, and whether in the places that where they have been, harbored or displaced. Also, as I said, that the interference with the relief corridors, and like a month ago, one of the basic bridge in Western Sudan in Chad, which was used to also in the delivery of humanitarian aid that comes through Chad, was also subjected to aerial bombardments and was completely destroyed, leaving, or making this kind of isolation between the areas or the sources of food that come from through Chad to reach Darfur and also outside Darfur in other regions. So that is, one of the problem of the how food have been weaponized. There are also have been large scale of looting of markets and warehouses, and then as we heard also about warehouses of food houses of World Food Program, that is a WFP, and NGOs, they have been all ransacked, and millions, of dollars of food aid intended also to feed the millions of vulnerable people have been stolen, and together with other items, health items, and whatever. And so that is, the problem of humanitarian aid. So there is no aid, especially at the beginning when all the international NGOs were evacuated, then people become, Sudanese people. They just find themselves that they have to fill the gaps, or at least to try to do something to their people. And then we started really mobilizing funds, and and also thanks to many of our British friends who have been working in Sudan, especially in Darfur and Kordofan, they really contributed a lot in the first days, and still from time to time they ask us if they can donate something. So the community was, by and large, reliant on this kind of self, or the diaspora kind of fundraising from their own resources. But the problem is that also whether RSF or the SAF, which is the Sudanese Armed Forces, and especially the militias, they have used, as in the process of weaponizing the food. Also, they because they become the people who have access, or that's the people actually who have monopoly over the food trucks and the food market. So they increase the prices. The prices become unaffordable for the local people to buy, and also they use it as a kind of because a political economy of war, and that is also how food, increasing prices, and also taking money through tax, regularized kind of taxes, and also um, and forcing people to take, really, especially women, to take sometimes behaviors, or to get into behaviors that in the normal situation, or in normal situations, they are not acceptable, but they force, those people because they have to eat, and also they have really to, so either they die or they eat. So here, food also is used as a kind of sexualized or weaponized, sexual violence. So now, those within Sudan, they suffer from all these kind of problems of accessing the aid that supposed to reach them. But at the same time, we have refugees across borders, especially in East Africa, and also in a part of North Africa, like in Libya, in Egypt. They also have also problems of having access to food. But in general, we see how, it's become very clear and obvious for people that food has been, or the international aid have been really weaponized to the vulnerability of people, and to the destruction of everything in the community.
So, on top of the inherent problems with receiving humanitarian aid caused by the actions of the RSF and the SAF, there's also some inherent obstacles to providing humanitarian aids that come, naturally. And when we last spoke, you mentioned the rainy season being quite a prevalent obstacle in Sudan. Can you talk us a little bit about the impact of the rainy season on humanitarian aid in Sudan?
Sudan is really, there is no actually kind of infrastructure, or the infrastructure in Sudan in terms of transportation and is very poor. And especially in periphery regions, Tufan and Darfur, which have now become the main battlefield. And in the past, people, as I mentioned, that in these areas, and especially in rural areas, it is the production, the local production that sustain people. So we have the farms and then farming production, and that goes people, even they use animals, like donkeys, like camels, whatever, to bring their food or their production from the farms to the markets, whether within these regions in Darfur, Kordofan, or maybe to other areas in Sudan or regions in Sudan. Now, the rainy season is actually spanned from June to October in Sudan, in most areas in Sudan. And this is a very critical, even in normal times, it is very, sometimes uh, the roads become completely as a result of war, as a result of floods and, uh, and heavy raining. But now there is an element which is more devastating, is the element of war. So now there has been a primary impact of this rainy season on the aid delivery and on popular vulnerable populations. And that is, the access has been very difficult. That is, if we have, deliver aid from Bur Sudan to Bur Sudan, then from Bur Sudan to go inside other parts in Sudan, especially in these places which have been now inaccessible and unreachable as a result of impassable, there's mud and flood and wadis, which is you know seasonal water streams and supply routes. These are vital corridors that is go to in this area of Kordofan, and they have entirely cut off, and trucks have been unable really to deliver, any kind of safe or life-saving food, medical supplies, or agricultural inputs, and so ever. There is also flooding, and this flooding also have been phenomenal since the start of the war. Whether the flooding from the River Nile, or whether it's from the wadis in Darfur, because there is no Nile in Darfur. So and then also another component of displacement of people because there is no aid. And this also, the already displaced families, they have to endure repeated waves of, again, more displacement because of this kind of lack of protection. And because unfortunately the aid, the delivery of aid um, has not been really connected to the protection of people from many sources of threats, including threats from floods and threats from because also with this comes the diseases and the outbreaks of diseases like cholera and diarrhea and malaria, especially malaria, and the absence of which is really disproportionately impacting malnourished people, children, and women, and that is alongside the collapsed healthcare infrastructure. So the rainy season is really a very big hazard, and that also people have not been or are not talking about, because they just, as I said, they talk about humanitarian aid, but they do not consider on to how to facilitate for this humanitarian aid amidst this kind of difficulty. That is a difficulty of by from that come from nature, how to do. So that means the humanitarian aid when it arrived in late, and then it was supposed to or it was scheduled or planned to reach. So that people means that they missed so many weeks or maybe months, maybe the whole season, rainy season, that they don't have access to humanitarian aid. And and also that also can impact, that aid also when it reach there, then also it's become also the damaged by the rain, because there is no protection of the aid itself from rainy season, which is very heavy, as I mentioned that in western Sudan, which is Darfur and Kordofan. And so there is no kind of measures, or credible measures also for the protection of aid, and as well as also as a protection of aid workers. Uh, Many of aid workers, they die as a result of trying really to navigate their way, because aid, humanitarian aid, also at some point can also pose a kind of threat to humanitarian aid workers. Many died, actually get killed, because those militias, they try to capture and these trucks, and to use them for their own interest, selling them in high prices to the people, to vulnerable people, and to do that they have to kill those aid workers. So that is also one also of the problems of humanitarian aid um, reaching or achieving its objective of helping vulnerable people, and also helping the humanitarian aid workers to do their job. And so that is all that related also to this rainy season. And that is the security, how security, lack of security affect the aid distribution, or the delivery and distribution, because there are different stages of humanitarian aid to administration of humanitarian aid. So these are all kind of problems that have also contributed um, to the vulnerability of people, and to starvation, that develop, or as a result of the inability of people to have access to the humanitarian aid, because of so many reasons. And we hope that war stops, or very soon, so that people can go back to their own places, and then and to farm their farms. Yeah, thank you.
Suad, in your experience, why do you think that Sudan does not receive nearly enough attention that it needs to in international media, especially when you compare it to other cases of wars where there is large scale instances of crimes against humanity, say in Ukraine or even Palestine?
Oh yeah, the crisis of Sudan is obviously is the largest compared to the crisis in Gaza, and or in Palestine and Ukraine together. But unfortunately, it has not received, the media attention, especially the international media attention it deserves, and that may, yeah, yes, that might attribute to different kind of logistical barriers, or combination of maybe logistical barriers and geopolitical biases, and and things is about maybe information uh, about the war itself, and the sources of information, and who are about those who can have access to information from Sudan, from the field, or from the war battle, or from the battleground. So, if I can just put them into points, then one of these reasons maybe is about the destruction of media infrastructure in Sudan. The media infrastructure, they were subjected several times to a complete to attack, either by rapid support forces, and that was in April 2023. So the local infrastructure become systematically devastated, and become out of order. And they say that estimates that indicate that like 90% of Sudan media have been facilities were have been destroyed, or disabled anyway. And many or hundreds of journalists were forced really to displacement, and some were detained, some were killed, and that was inside Sudan. And those journalists, actually, they are the source of or they are the actors who disseminate information about what is going on in Sudan, and especially those in independent press. So they were forced to leave Sudan, and creating this gap of information about what is going on. And then comes to the foreign press, that is international organizations, these international organizations, and um, maybe because they depend on, they have their focal points as journalists or points of information collection. So especially those who can navigate the conflict zones and operate on the ground, so that become inaccessible for them. So and then so without correspondence and reliable correspondence is maybe station inside the country, it's become just to capture, daily interest and crisis updates. So the conflict lack, kind of visual, immediacy as in other places. Uh, but that is, a kind of allegations because in Gaza and in Ukraine, the situation is just similar, but it's still people they go and they are journalists reporting and all this kind of thing. So there is something that is not acceptable in this kind of allegations or even in this kind of analysis. So it is or no matter how realistic it is, and also the SAF and the RSF also, they have also their media propaganda, and they have their campaigns across the social media. So also they have their coordinated networks, and then they manipulated the media and obscure the atrocities and all this kind of so that make it the source of information. Even the information that is available in the media might not be trusted by the international media outlets. But there's also another, it's about why the Sudan does not receive the attention it deserves, because it's not about Sudan, it is about people, it's about communities, it's about people get killed, and it's about continuous kind of committing atrocities by both parties. So that is so what is the main reason of those international community, international media not paying attention to this? Maybe this is what is called in Ukraine and in Gaza. They have, dominated the headlines and the democratic also diplomatic, yes, bandwidth. But that is, it is kind of just like, there is a hierarchy in the media coverage. Is that, the important and the most important and the important and less important. Sudan come, war in Sudan come at the bottom. Maybe it's called conflict in economically or dominant strategic states, because people, they just care about the places or about the issues that they have economic kind of geopolitical kind of interest, and that may be not in Sudan, uh, like in the other parties. But international actors, they unite, to condemn war in Sudan, in Ukraine, and to condemn war in Palestine. Collectively, they united and they unite in condemnation, but not the case in Sudan. That is because the Sudan has a complex web maybe of regional and international stakeholders providing financial, logistic, or military backing to opposing sides. So the war has its interests that really concern the different international actors. So those different international actors, they have, some of them have their interest in the continuation of war, and some of them, they have also their interest in whether it is military backing, and all these, they are all, you know um, it's about the resources in Sudan. And because Sudan has been now identified as a very rich country, especially in minerals, and that is gold, and also there is oil, and there is a huge land, and there are also other kind of the location of Sudan itself is a very strategic. So there is also kind of competition, especially along the um, uh, river, not the river line, but it's the Red Sea. the Red Sea has also become a hub or has become like a point of international competition and international. So all this kind of complex web of regional and international stockholders' interest, they also contributed to, because it still is not clear whether this conflict is going to end for the interest of SAF or for the interest of RSF. So this kind of uncertainty about the conclusion of this conflict or even the peace process, which is coming anyway. So that is why the international community, they do not pay that attention in terms of diplomatic kind of intervention and or in terms of putting Sudan in the top of UN Security Council agenda, because even the UN has not been doing its job in in the maintenance of security and in kind of effective kind of intervention to stop this war. So downplaying the crisis helped shield allies implicated in fueling the war from sustained public scrutiny and accountability. So that is all what we can see about the war. Yeah, and we don't know because now the war has been internationalized. The war itself, the war in Sudan have been weaponized at international level, so that everyone do not take any action unless they guarantee or at least they make sure that this war is gonna end in the way that can serve their own vested interest. So that is maybe in my analysis that why the international community, despite the alleged reasons drawn to explain that, and that we understand very well, but it is a personal interest that drives those people to take their positions in this conflict in Sudan, which is unfortunately is not to take positive and influential and sustainable action that can end the violence and war in Sudan.
On the flip side of international coverage, like obviously the conflict, as you describe, has not been covered well enough. And at the same time, there's this element, especially with not just Sudan, but other countries in conflict areas where if it gets international coverage, it is exclusively about the war, the conflict, the humanitarian crisis, without much addressing of the other elements of the country. So is there anything that you would want people to understand about Sudan, about Sudanese people, the culture, the spirit that people in the West or people, in foreign countries don't understand from the news or coverage about the war?
I think this war started in 2000. In 2003, the Sudanese people really they have been suffering. We have more than 10 millions now left the country and as refugees across borders, especially in East Africa. And we have more now than 25 millions at the brink of starvation in Sudan, despite the efforts of humanitarian aid that international communities, especially Europeans and UK, have been really trying to help with. Um, and but before even the international aid, or because even the war has come to the fore to be understood as something very devastating, and and needs intervention from our partners and our international actors of peace. And then it was the Sudanese people and all the international NGOs evacuated from Sudan, because before this war, Sudan also experienced war in Darfur from 2003 up until the 2019, and that was recognized as the worst humanitarian crisis ever experienced in the whole wide world. That was in 2003 and 2004, but the war continued unabatedly until we have this revolution in Sudan succeeded in 2019 to topple down the Islamist government of al-Bashir. And then we had a transitional government put in place, led by Dr. Hamado. But that transitional government was again overthrown by a military and Islamist-led, um, faction, which has now become the de facto regime in Sudan. So during all this kind of crisis, it is the Sudanese people who were able really to stand with each other. In Sudan, we have a very strong culture of solidarity. I cannot actually say that the Sudanese are, but everybody who has been to Sudan or who knows about Sudan, especially the British people, because they are those who know Sudan the best, that the Sudanese are a very connected community and they are very, the people who stand with each other. We have a very strong connection among ourselves. And that's that kind of connection, that is side of social relations that, help people to come and to have that solidarity with each other. And then through that solidarity, people were able really to help those who are in worse situations. And then they share whatever they have, the money, the houses, because people, they kept moving from house to house, from a village to a village within Sudan. Before, in the end, they decided, the majority decided to leave Sudan because it has become completely difficult place to stay. So they open their homes to all people fleeing from their cities or from their government. So that is one of the characteristic of the Sudanese people. The other thing is that, and that is built from the culture. The Sudanese also, they use, Sudanese art. We have music, we have poetry, we have kind of intellectual life. And, uh, and that is also people used all this, as an instrument of resistance and also of identity during all this, crisis of war until, it's become difficult, as I said, for them to continue because they become either if you stay and or you do something, then you get killed or you become detained by the government, by the Islamists now, ruling the country, and because they can simply identify you as affiliating to the rapid support forces. So they slaughter you because now we have this terrorist Islamist group, which are also, sponsored by the government, by the current government, Islamist government in Sudan. So they slaughter people, especially young people, beheading them and, committed so, gender-based violence, especially rape, whatever. So, but they are always, the people who they can help you. The trauma is huge, but that is a kind of the Sudanese. So the Sudanese are people who sympathize with each other, and we have also, in terms of politics, also the Sudanese, we have a history of pluralism and political consciousness. The public also narrative, they treat Sudan as Sudan is a tribal society, and that is, maybe because of that tribalism or that kind of ethnic also of ethnicity that people, they come together whenever there is crisis, but they don't come together as as just a tribe, but they come together to share, grievances because it's the whole country now. There is no classification that those people suffer more than those or whatever. Yes, there are, areas that suffer the most, like in Darfur and Kordofan, but even those, who fled from Khartoum and from northern Sudan, and those who still also live there, they have. But the only thing that people the solidarity, sort of solidarity, they have been helping each other. So we have emergency rooms that we really develop, and these emergency rooms is to collect funds from wherever we can collect, and that is mainly from Sudanese and our friends who are not Sudanese. So through these emergency rooms, we run Takaya, which is a community kitchens, and this community kitchens is just we have just like cook food and under trees in Sudan, and in a village or in neighborhoods, in central, in cities, and then distribute food to people. Keep monitoring the situation. So whenever there is shelling or whenever there is any kind of hazards, then we also alert people to to stay away, to look after, this the elderly people who are unable to move out or even to travel, and, all this kind of solidarity, also documentation of the atrocities. We have civil society organizations, especially women civil society organizations. They have been huge kind, because we have developed a culture of organizing among women. So women have huge kind of, organizations, looking after the documentation of atrocities that are committed gender against women or against children. And we have, this kind of resilience. So the resilience, for those people is the one or is the actually value and the principle and the practice that has been holding Sudanese together, whether within Sudan or outside Sudan. We become as a one community. Maybe this, if there is a positive impact of outcome of this work, that the Sudanese people, they realize that they are one community and they have to stand with each other, against those rivals or against those enemies of the community. Because for us, that is this war is the enemy of the community, and those who running it, they are the people that we got to make sure that they do not take part and they do not participate, they do not become part in any future resettlement of this conflict. So that is, that resilience and that is belief in ourselves as capable. Actually, we need support from the international community, really to guide us, because especially in terms of finance, we don't have money to finance any kind of initiatives, but we still count on support from different or from our partners, our friends, and the international community. And also, we rely on them and we count on them to, yes, to be committed to the other obligations and to the human rights conventions and treaties and regional ones that can help, because this stability in Sudan is a stability at regional level, and it's such as stability and peace. Peace in Sudan is actually contributes to the international peace and also contribute to the regional peace, in Sudan. So that is why the Sudanese, they understand that pretty well, helping, or we are, organizing, especially through Sumud, which is a huge, was the biggest kind of coalition of civil society, Sudanese civil society, to lead the process humanitarian aid, protection, and ceasefire, to begin also with us in a process of political stability, so that we can have a political negotiations and settlement to this crisis.
I wanted to briefly ask you about your book. You wrote a book called Hawks and Doves in Sudan's Armed Conflict, which, among other things, won the I Do Snyder Book Prize in 2019. So a belated congratulations on that. And we'll be sure to link out the book in our description of this episode. Can you tell our listeners a bit about what your book is about and where people can find it?
Thank you, thank you. Yes, I wrote that book. It's called Hawks and Doves in Sudan's Conflict Al-Hakamat Bakar of Women on Darfur. And it's published by James Curry. And this book, it provides a unique narrative about a group of women or a class of women called Hakamat. And those Hakamat women are found among the Arab tribes of Darfur and Kordofan as well. But they are influential poets, and actually they are all-round women. They are poets, they are singers, they are women of wisdom, and they have a very uh, you know prominent social and political role in their societies or in their communities. So like every tribe has a hakama. Hakamat is a plural. So like every tribe has hakamat, but they are also kind of identification of those hakamats in terms of their qualities. But they are very influential, all of them, and they can sway the balance of conflict, and whether towards peace or towards more kind of aggression. And that is depends on the situation of that conflict. And that is because these tribes in Western Sudan, the Arab tribes in Western Sudan, they completely get in conflict, with each other and with other indigenous or African tribes. And this competition, most of them are around agriculture or natural resources. It's about competition over natural resources, but there are also other reasons that may lead, to the eruption of conflict. So those hakamat, they have that power because of voice, because they don't hold arms, and they don't, do any kind of this kind of aggressive kind of physically aggressive kind of behaviors. So, but they have the power of voice, and they are recognized as part of the organizational and structure of these tribes in Western Sudan. They played a very big, they play actually role in the mobilization of people for fighting. And then in 1993, when the Islamist, they took over the country or the government from uh, a democratic regime in 1989. In 1992, because the war in South Sudan was going on, so they turned or transform the war in South Sudan into a war into a holy war. That is a war between Islam and Muslims and Christian. And then they mobilized those women and co-opted them in the system, in the military institution as informal body, just like what they did in actually co-opting the militia of Hemeti, which later becomes the Rapid Support Forces. So those women, they played a very really devastating role in that conflict, in South Sudan, but also in other conflicts. And that is because, they believe that they support their people. So that's why the government needed the voice of al-Hakamat to, to stir the courage of those fighters, to fight for them. So these are the commandments, but they also have that social role. And so this book is about that role of al-Hakamat, how, they showcase their influence and their agency in wars, but the book is about, the Islamist co-opting and also assimilating people in Sudan for war. And the conclusion of the book is that unless this issue is addressed, then Sudan is not going to stop from fighting, especially if the Islamists become or take any part in the ruling mechanism of Sudan. And that is what happened now. This is what we're seeing now as these Islamist people, they assimilated the Hemeti in the military institution because they were militias, but they assimilated them through a decree and they become rapid support forces. And then they use them in the war in Darfur, and also, and then in the end they get into conflict with them, and this conflict erupted between this militia or this which was recognized as militia in the fact, but at that moment when they get into conflict with the military, with the armed Sudanese armed forces, they were not a militia, but they were part and parcel of the military institution. But because they have all this kind, of cultural background, they are fierce fighters and warriors, and also they have that backup from Al-Hakama. Now, in this war, Al-Hakamat voice also is very strong in, standing with their people, and in this case, is the rapid support forces. So it is all thing is about, the impact of conflict, across the intersection of identity, gender, and ethnicity and geography in Sudan. All these components or entities that have become now very problematic in Sudan and has become divising the Sudanese people rather than bringing them together. So that was about that book at that point. So that's why maybe that book, won the prize of IDO of 2019 IDO Snyder prize. And you can find it now. It's just in Amazon, actually, in most of the British universities and other international universities. in America, in Europe, and in Britain here. It is used as a reference, but if you want to buy it, then it is available in Amazon. And if you search it in the internet, then you can also find there are many publishers, academic publishers, and online booksellers also, and as international contributors, you can find them just by writing the name of the book, so you can find the easiest way to have a copy. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, once again, the book is called Hawks and Dove in Sudan's Armed Conflict. We will definitely provide a link for that in the description of this episode. Suad, you've been very generous with your time today. One last question for you, and we always end our interviews with a version of this same question. We want people who learn from your experience and your expertise to be informed about how they can take action. Specifically to help Sudanese people at the grassroots aid level. So, do you have any recommendations for listeners who want to take the next step and actually contribute to humanitarian aid in Sudan?
Yeah, thank you, Andreas, for this. Actually, we have been really, or I myself have been really leading an advocacy and for support to Sudan, and especially through humanitarian aid, and also because of this kind of formal addressing humanitarian aid or delivering humanitarian aid through the government has been really very problematic, and uh, and because in the end there is no guarantee that this aid, rich can reach people. So we are now working with civil society organizations, and then but thanks, to the international community for their support and their help. But we have now been, like myself, working through civil society organizations where we send money directly to those organizations. For instance, in El-Fasher, in El Jinena, or in other villages, in Nuba Mountains or in the Kurdufan. So we send the money directly through informal kind of money transfer, and that is because we guarantee that the money we can send it today and they reach the recipients the same day or just the same hour. So that is the way that we collect. When we collect this. The money, then we do. We also created a kind of GoFundMe, and also for the same cause. We also have emergency rooms, and these emergency response rooms that also we created, and this is like a national, nationwide network for, there are more than 25,000 Sudanese volunteers, from different areas, some are doctors, some are young people, civil society, engineers, community. They are operating in the 28. Sudan is divided into 28 sub-states. So they are also working. We have those traditional culture, collective, that is the Nafir. That Nafir is a name that come from Darfur, which is, like when we organize this kitchen under trees, cooking meals. And then actually we cook only one meal because there is no money to give people more than one meal, and that meal is just to keep people from starving and from dying by starvation. Uh, so we have that is a kind of all kind of international aid. We appreciate them, but that is the only way that we do it. We have also women's response rooms, and that is also women as an umbrella uh, with for also dozens of women organizations, focusing on protection and support for survivors of conflict, and working also on trauma, help people, to uh, uh, lift them from trauma, and also show kind of solidarity, which means that we have like an open space, public space for women to come and to speak up, and as a kind of telling stories about their experiences, the atrocious experiences they have been through, not necessarily that they identify themselves, or this to link these experiences to their own lives, but anyway, to talk about things like that happening. And yeah, so that is what what we are really advocating now, and I myself, I said, um, and we have this GoFundMe, and that we collect money, especially because even those groups like women's response rooms and emergency rooms that we are, even here in the UK. I am part also of the emergency response rooms that we created in 2020, 25. So we have been also working on that. But the point is that it is very difficult really to, like if you want to make donations, it is difficult to make donations through banks because we don't have banks working in Sudan. And international aid organizations, also the majority have been evacuated because of security reasons. And those small numbers, they cluster in certain places that is a bit secure, but the majority of population, they live far away in places that is difficult to reach. And here it comes our job here and our responsibility, obligation, and our actually aspiration to reach those people and to try to save them from death and from hunger, by hunger, or by other diseases. So it is a very kind of complicated, but that is the way. But if any people, can you just maybe share, Andrew, share my email or my telephone with our listeners who might be interested really to donate anything, and to those people, and then we show you how we send we send the money. We show you by evidence, that this money has been sent to that organization, and also we receive how that money. If you give $10 or £10, then we say how we tell you how we use that money. There is a very important thing that I got to mention really, that at the gender center in El-Fasher that I mentioned, that we established for women justice and sustainable for peace, justice and sustainable development. We have been really from the first days. We have been working on providing young people, adolescents, with sanitary packages, sanitary aid. And that sanitary aid, because also we conducted a research, small research, and we asked those girls, and then we realized that those girls, because they lack money and because they don't have access to buy, this personal aid, especially, the cotton, have a piece of sabun, of soap, and, just to clean up themselves. And during menstruation, some they don't have pants; they have only one pant because they come running, and they lost everything. So what they told us that they need, they become like subject to human or sexual traffickers, and who exploit, or who take advantage of this situation, and and put them under the exploitation, sexual exploitation, and then they give them money to buy these needs. So that is why they ask us that if you can help us with provide us with these needs, so that we can buy cotton, we can buy pads, and we can buy pants, and have just two pieces of soap, and then we can have just so many that we can buy water during these days, that to wash ourselves. And that is what we have been doing really in the last 3 years. Sometimes you can have only £100, sterling pound, and that 100 sterling pound, that can help 30 girls. £100 can help 30 girls, because the price is there. It's not that expensive, of this item. So now we are continuing doing that, but sometimes we find it really difficult, because when those girls, they take the money to their families, then their families, they take the money from them, and then they are told them that the priority is to buy, food. It's not to buy these items for you. You can just go and manage by your own. So that makes us, we buy these items by ourselves, and then also try to give some kind of food, like 1 kilo of rice, or 1 kilo of lentils, just to help at least during these days, so that girls don't as a result of trauma, because there are also incidents of girls committing suicides as a result of pregnancy that comes through this kind of atrocities. This, what I am telling this point, it has not been really actually documented by any organizations. And because there are some issues that we don't give them to organizations, and to make it in a way that we don't want it. We think, or maybe harmful, we think as harmful to those people. So we just keep it, on documents, but we try to help. So I'm really advocating, and I'm really actually appealing for all the listeners really to try and to help us continue this support for the adolescents, because that is very small kind. And if you can donate 5, 10 pounds or whatsoever, then it will be really very helpful that we can help those girls. Thank you.
Suad, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Suad.
Thank you all.
This has been an episode of the St. Martin's Cloak Podcast. Today is August 5th, 2026. Thank you for listening, and stay safe.